Yeah, I'm going to sit here.
As you wish. All right, we're going to get started. So if everyone can take their seats, if you're staying, thank you. So thank you very much for joining us. Maelle, thank you very much for coming. You came all the way from Russia. You're leaving tomorrow?
Yes.
So for those who don't know, Maelle is the CEO of a company called Ozon, which is a huge e-commerce group, not an e-commerce company, but a group of companies in Russia. Do online retail, but you also do online travel, you're an online shoe store, you have your own delivery system, you do logistics. So can you tell us a little bit more about the company, how you got started?
So the company was actually really a pioneer in its industry because it was created 16 years ago. And there is a joke about Ozon employee about the fact that we kind of created the internet in Russia because when we entered, there was literally almost nobody online in Russia. So 16 years ago, the company was created. And now it's almost 3,000 employees. We did 32 billion rubles of revenue last year.
How much is that in dollars?
That's the $1,000,000 question, actually, because with the ruble exchange rate, it's a little bit harder to count. So I will not do the calculation today for you.
Well, you can do it in the audience if you want to. But how does you were born in France?
Yes.
How does a young French woman come at the head of this huge Russian e-commerce group?
It's a long story, but the short, very, very short version is that I learned Russian at school. I did German as first language, foreign language, and then I did Russian. I created my first business, my first startup in Russia. Then I left saying, oh my God, I never want to go back to that country. They're all crazy. And then I came back thinking, actually, there are so many opportunities. I was working for an American company called BCG, which is a consulting company, and they offered me to, after I spent 5 years with them, they offered me for my 6 years to move back to Russia to help them grow some of their practices, and my last client was Ozon, and they made me an offer which I obviously couldn't refuse.
And here you are today. How's Ozon doing?
Ozon is doing really well. We've had an extremely good Q4, and Q1 is looking good. So far, so good.
You speak in quarterly terms. That's almost like a public company, but you're not public yet.
No, not yet. Not
Are
yet.
you preparing yourself to be a public company?
Look, I mean, we closed. What was it? Less than a year ago, we raised $150 million, and I think the timing was perfect. That gave us the opportunity to really think long-term and not to be pressed by timing and to say, we have to raise more money or we have to go public. This $150 million will take us all the way to profitability without any problem. And so, obviously, you know, every company that's been around for 16 years in the internet space think about IPO, but that's really not what we're focusing on right now. We're focusing on keeping the growth of the business.
Got it. What about competition? Do you think you'll get bought by Alibaba or Rakuten or an Amazon? Who knows?
Look, I mean, there is the elephant in the room. I think if we talk about the current situation in Russia, there are very few people who feel extremely excited to invest in Russia at the moment. Though in my view, it's a mistake. I mean, if you look at the way Russia behaved in 1999 and the way it behaved in 2009, what you can see is that investors who invested during this period actually had amazing return on investment. So the one who believe in the fact that Russia is an extremely resilient country actually get extremely good payback. But clearly right now there is a big question mark about, as an investor, do you want or don't you want to invest in Russia? And so I'm not in the head of Alibaba, Amazon, and the others, but I would imagine that Russia is probably not on the top of their list right now.
I can imagine as well. But if they would be interested in acquiring a company in Russia, they kind
Then it has to be us, for sure.
But they can't get around you because you have your own logistics system, which is a huge differentiator. Like, can you explain that a little to the audience?
Yeah, so so first of all, it's true they can't get around us. We built the company as a group so that we control entirely the value chain, and that we have this great barrier to entry. I mean, they're great for us, less great for the others, but because we do have not only the website and not only the fulfillment centers like most e-commerce have, but we also have the entire delivery chain, so all the way to the customer and back. We do the last mile. The reason why we've done that is because we felt that the delivery services that were available in Russia when we started the company were not good enough for our customers, so we went all the way to the customer. And now it is an amazing advantage because we can differentiate ourselves, and we have even started to offer it to third parties, so we feel very confident in that.
All right. So you've raised this big round of funding. This conference is called 4 years from now. Where do you see yourself in 4 years?
Even bigger, even stronger. I think in every tough economic situations, there are companies that feel stronger and companies that feel weaker. And I really strongly believe that Ozon is going to get stronger and stronger. As I said, first because we managed to close this fundraising really on a very good timing, just in time. Also because we have the best known brand in Russia when it comes to e-commerce and when it comes to travel. You mentioned travel. We're the biggest online travel agency currently in Russia. We process 7% of all the flights sold in Russia, not only online plus offline. 7% of them are going through Ozon Travel. We have the biggest customer database. We have the largest database of affiliates. So we have around 40,000 affiliates that works with Ozon.ru. And so because of that, because we're not at all in a cost-cutting phase, we're not downsizing like some may need to or may expect us to do, we keep investing, we keep hiring people, and I think history has shown many, many times, and not only in Russia, that the players who are capable of continuing to invest reasonably, but still continue to invest, usually emerge so much stronger than everybody else that actually it's worth, holding on. Right.
Well, considering this economic turmoil, it also drives valuations of other internet companies down, which is bad for them. But for a company with resources, it also presents opportunities for acquisitions. Are you looking at companies in Russia, or is that not in the cards right now?
I think there's going to be a lot going on in the Russian market, not only with Ozon, but in general. The Russian market clearly right now is undervalued. There are a lot of companies for cheap. And there's probably going to be even more in the near future, depending on how the market evolves. So if you combine that with the fact that a lot of the internet companies are not profitable, so they need to raise money on a regular basis, you're going to see probably a strong consolidation of the market, either through purchase or through bankruptcy. In Ozon, we feel that we've already done 2 acquisitions. We acquired Zapato, which is a shoe business, and we acquired Litres, a minority stake in Litres, which is the biggest ebook platform in Russia. We think that this is probably for now good enough, but if the good deal comes around.
Right. So basically, you're waiting for the valuations to go even lower. Then you're going to swoop in. So in case you hadn't noticed, a few miles down the road, there's a small conference going on called the Mobile World Congress.
Tiny.
Much more boring than this one, but much bigger. What's your mobile strategy? How much of your sales is currently coming from mobile? And how do you expect that to grow in the coming years?
So we've been becoming more and more bullish about mobile. We launched our first app 5 years ago for Ozon.ru. We've just relaunched it in Q4 last year. And we already have around 5 million downloads of this app. So we're fairly happy with it. Ozon.ru right now does around 20% of its sales on mobile. Not necessarily through app, but generally on mobile. And we see it growing really, really fast. So on Ozon.ru, we clearly expect that this is going to reach 30, 40% really, really soon. And Russians use a lot of mobile devices. And so we expect that to keep growing. If we take Litres, for example, which I mentioned we have a minority stake in, Litres is already doing 40% of its sales on mobile. And same thing, it keeps growing and growing and growing. We've just launched an application for Ozon Travel, and I don't have the results yet, but I expect same thing, that it's going to grow really, really fast.
Yeah. I read somewhere that, well, when I was researching this for this interview, it said somewhere like 10% of our sales is coming through phone. I was like, that's not bad, because I thought it was mobile application orders, but it was actually people still, picking up the telephone and
That's
actually
the
making
other
orders.
phone.
That's the other phone, actually picking up the phone and calling an e-commerce company. Does that still happen?
Yes. Yes, I think because Ozon has been playing this pioneer role where we have helped a lot of internet users, actually a lot of consumers, to move from the traditional offline purchase to online. They feel that they need to talk to a human being, and our call center is actually a way for us to help them move from offline to online. So we have sometimes these grandmothers calling us. They're actually in front of the computer, and they will tell to our operator on which button to click, to process the order.
It's like a catalog.
Exactly, but they still want to have a human being to talk to and help them through it. Usually, once the customer did 2 to 3 purchases through the call center, you will actually flip to online, but I think that's part of the education process. And again, because we're the pioneer in that area, I think it's okay for us to do it.
Sure, okay. So another thing is, because you're well equipped and obviously you have a good strategy for Russia because they're so specific. It's a big country, logistics system hasn't always been reliable in the past. But then if you want to grow outside of Russia, the reason I'm asking this question is because if you look at the biggest internet companies in Russia, Yandex and Mail.ru, which are both public companies, they haven't really made a mark outside of Russia yet. They're trying very hard, but they haven't been able to. Do you think Ozon will ever expand outside of Russia? Is it necessary at all? Or do you think growth in Russia alone will be enough?
I think as we're talking about 5 years from now, 4 years from now, 4 years from now, I think we have so much to do in Russia. If you look at the Russian market, so roughly 150 million people, roughly 80 million of them are online. Out of these 80 million, probably no more than 20-25 million are doing online purchases, and out of these 20-25 million, probably no more than a third are actually using internet purchases as one of their primary source of purchase, meaning they do at least one purchase per month online. We're miles away from being at saturation level, even from an internet perspective. Russia has been catching up extremely fast, and they continue to increase the number of online users. But when it comes to e-commerce or online travel, we're so far from saturation that I think it would be just defocusing the company. And as you mentioned at the beginning, I mean, we're already doing so much. We're doing e-commerce, and we're doing travel, and we're doing shoes, and we're doing e-books, and we're doing delivery. And so at some point, I think maybe one day we'll take over Alibaba, but I guess there's going to be a bit of time before that.
Well, it's good to forecast, at least. So one of the other things I wanted to brush on, because I know you're not a political commentator, though you're a businesswoman, you don't really like to talk about it, but a lot of people in the audience, I'm sure, want to know, in this Russia today, is it harder to do business in than it was a year ago? It's obviously going to be yes, right?
Actually, I'm going to talk only about what I know. It's really hard, I think, especially when there is so much conflicting information everywhere. I think it's really hard to have a one-sided answer. So I'm going to talk about what I know, which is Ozon. Since everything that you know happened, Ozon has been continuously growing. We haven't been concerned at all by the sanctions. We have continued to serve our customers the way we've done. We have expanded our assortment. We have continued to hire, as I said. And so fundamentally, for a business like ours, nothing has changed. We have continued to grow the way it was.
It's kind of strange, though, because it seems that it's a company that's tied inherently to the local economy. Because if people start spending less, it would be natural in this climate.
I mean, it's still early. I think right now we're just at the beginning of March. What, in my view, characterizes the market right now is unpredictability. And all the CEO I know, we're all talking to each other to understand, how are your sales doing, and what are you doing next month, and have you touched the salary of your employees? But right now, In December, we had record sales, partially because a lot of Russians went to buy everything they could because they were worried about the currency fluctuating too much. In January, this is the sales period, and again, we saw Russians continuing to come to buy. February has shown some sign of weakness in the general consumption, but when it comes to Ozon, I think we've been helped tremendously by the fact that people have continued to go from offline to online, and even if the general pie of the economy is shrinking, the part of the online is actually growing. And so for a company like ours, and again, I'm not talking about the overall economy, but for a company like ours, we continue to grow because the fundamentals of the business are good, the value proposition for the customer is good, and so we continue to grow.
But you mentioned in general uncertainty, unpredictability,
yes.
which is something that foreign investors hate, for good reason.
Not all of them.
Not all of them. But then your last round, the 150 million that you were talking about, was all Russian investors. There weren't any foreign investors participating in that round. So why was that?
It was a decision. I mean, we had a choice, and we just felt that having MTS, which is the biggest telecom operator, was actually something that would be beneficial for Ozon from a strategic perspective. So it wasn't a decision based on we have to go Russian. It was more about, it makes a lot of strategic sense to be affiliated with the biggest telecom operator in Russia.
Why?
Because they have, for many reasons, but one of the reasons was they have this huge network of stores, and Ozon relies very much on what we call pick-up point. We have 1,600 in the country. We have spent enormous amount of resources and time and people on building that network. MTS has a lot more than that, several thousand stores, and the idea that we could benefit from their store to actually increase our coverage was actually extremely attractive to us. Then you have all this question of marketing. Can you cross-sell? Because MTS has the biggest customer database in the country.
So it made strategic sense, and you chose specifically
yes.
Russian investors, not the other way around.
We choose specifically the biggest telecom operator in the country. That's what we choose.
Interesting. So if you look outside, aside from Ozon, are you keeping track of what goes on in the Russian or the Moscow startup ecosystem?
Yes, we do. We do look
so
a
what
lot
do you see?
around.
You see lots of activity? Do you see it slowing down?
No, I think what we've seen is there was already over the last 2-3 years a lot of activities, a lot of young people that were trying to get startups up and running. I think a lot of them were finding it difficult to find fundings because not a lot of foreign investors, let's be honest, want to invest in tiny startups in Russia, no matter what happened with the economic or political situation. So it was already difficult 2 years ago. Again, I think the ones who invested don't regret it, but there are not that many of them. What I can see now is that the startups, a lot of them are still up and running and still growing, and I think Russia has a lot of really brilliant minds, a lot of really good engineers, a lot of really good IT people, and a lot of really good hackers. So all of that makes it for a quite interesting tech scene. But clearly, I think right now for a lot of them, because it's going to be even harder to find funding, I expect the scene to change a little bit.
Right. Have you made any angel investments?
Are we sorry?
Have you made any business angel investments?
No.
In Moscow?
No.
Out of principle, or?
Ozon, you mean? Or
no,
me
you
personally? I'm not being paid enough for that.
There's a salary issue.
I think my board is somewhere around in the world.
Well, then you should repeat it. Yeah. That's interesting, though. We talked about competition a little, but I want to know what the situation is right now. Is Alibaba at all looking at Russia? Have they made any moves? Has Amazon made any moves?
Look, again, I can comment on what I see and that you can actually read in the press. Amazon has very little activity in Russia. They try to enter Russia through the e-book market.
Yeah. They made a key hire, I think, not too long ago.
Yeah, like 2 years ago, but so far it hasn't gone anywhere as far as I can see. And that was also what triggered or helped us to make this acquisition of Litras, because we felt that we needed to consolidate or leadership in the book market. When it comes to Alibaba, they're a lot more active through AliExpress. They're not actually present in Russia as such. I mean, I think they have 2 or 3 people, but they're shipping a lot from China. And I think for us, they are really the key competitor, the people we are really looking at, because we think that they're very strong and their business model is interesting. And so because they have a common frontier with Russia, they're definitely the people we're looking at the most.
What about local competitors? Any Russian companies that you think?
No, we killed most of them.
You kill most of them. Wow, that's a statement.
No, but look, I mean, seriously, I think when we look at the Russian scene, we look at offline retailers, and so far, very few offline retailers have been able to develop a proper multi-channel strategy. I think the only one that has been doing really good, by our opinion, is a company called M-Video. They're a public company. They're an electronic retailer, mainly household appliances, but also, mobile, TV, etc. They've done a really good job with their multi-channel strategy. The other offline retailers seems to be a little bit far away from that. And then when it comes to online, there has been a lot of competition in the fashion market, but not so much in the rest of the e-commerce. There were a couple of attempts to create competitors of Ozon, but one closed and one is probably about to close, so I think, yeah.
That's good news for you?
Yes, very good.
We've talked about this a little bit before, but if you look at if Russia gets portrayed in the media now, and I'm not just talking about economical or political, but even in business, like Spotify not launching in Russia as they planned very recently, Apple halting online sales because of the ruble fluctuations and whatnot. Does that frustrate you? Or do you think it's the wrong perception of these companies?
I think, no, it doesn't frustrate me. I think I understand why a lot of these decisions are being taken. I think Russia is a complex environment. I think what's happening is difficult to grasp even for people who are inside the country. So no, it doesn't, no, I think I would have expected that kind of behavior.
All right. It's maybe an odd question, but what brings you to Barcelona in the first place?
The weather.
But seriously though, your only operation in Russia, what brings you here?
Have you seen the weather in Moscow?
I
Seriously?
have, I've lived here, I know. I'm a fool for leaving, that's what I am.
No, but look, I mean, I think as we discussed briefly with you, there's a lot going on in the mobile space. One of our shareholders is, as I say, a key telecom operator. We've never been to Barcelona to this conference before, so I think it was more the opportunity to see a little bit closer what's going on, meet a few startups. We do work actually with a lot of partners which come either from Europe or from Israel or from the US. So when we go to conferences like that, we tend to meet with a lot of them. And so it's just the opportunity to keep being active in the ecosystem.
Makes sense. All right, we have about 2 minutes left. I want to make sure that if you have a question in the audience that you get a chance to actually ask it. I can't really see much of it, but if you want to ask a question, just raise your hand. There are 2 handheld mics. There you go. Oh, the light goes on. That's even easier. Can you tell us who you are before you ask a question, please?
Yeah, okay. I'm David Marimon from a company called Kachum, which does image recognition. My question is regarding the Amazon launch of the latest phone, which includes one of the functionalities which is called Firefly, which allows you to scan objects and go directly to the online shop. And I wanted to know what's your opinion about using offline-online triggers like this one, and whether Ozon is interested in this kind of functionality.
Good question, thank you.
That's a good question, yeah. So I'm going to answer a little bit aside, and then I come back to that. I think this question of offline and online is actually really important. I think this idea that online is separated from offline is a bit of the past. Ozon has been working for the reason we discussed before in the offline area through our delivery system for a long time. But all in all, what we learned from that experience is that you can't say, my customer is only online. Fundamentally, you interact with a customer which is not a digital entity when you're an e-commerce player. You interact with a customer which is made of, blood. And so you need to be actually able to interact with him. So when I look at what Amazon is doing through what you've just described through the lockers that they're trying to develop everywhere in the US. I think this is about that. This is about trying to get this multi-channel approach, about getting closer to the customer, and I think it makes a lot of sense. There's going to be some failures, there's going to be some success, but at the end of the day, this idea that offline and online need to converge, in my view, makes a lot of sense. Whether we're going to launch that this year, probably not.
All right, half a minute. Go ahead. Yeah, one more question. Right here. Tell us who you are, please.
Daniel Melter. I'm just curious, how do you find life in Moscow? I mean, do you find it great, or do you go out a lot? How is it like?
I do go out a lot, but that's not necessarily linked to Moscow. Look, I think Moscow is a huge urban area. It's a big city, it's a capital. You will find in Moscow a lot of the things that you find everywhere else. You know, a bunch of restaurants, a lot of nightclubs, a lot of businesses going on. So I think if you like the city life, Moscow is perfect. It's the ultimate city to be in. If you prefer the countryside and the fresh air and the birds, that's probably not your scene.
Yeah, I've been to Moscow, and trust me, the traffic jams are the worst.
But
if you've never been, those are the worst.
They have a really great subway.
They have a really great subway. It balances out. Maelle, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for listening.